back. James Harden right on target. Bang, bang, George Niang to Paul Reed from Tyrese Maxey.
Joel
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Pick Swap Podcast. It is a very exciting week for Philadelphia sports fans. We're leading up to the Super Bowl. Obviously, a lot to cover here with the Sixers as well. It's me and Sean Barnard as usual. Sean, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a quiet NBA trade deadline aside from the Kyrie news, which we're going to touch on here. But it feels like things have kind of hit a bit of a standstill, hoping for some momentum on things ready to get going. But overall, the vibes are high, and hopefully we get into some Sixers trades and what they end up doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited for this week. Kind of coming down, the next 2 days are going to be interesting. I feel like there's way too many rumors for there to not be some things to happen. I don't necessarily expect any like massive ticket items kind of going either way, but it feels like Toronto's going to be really active. It feels like Utah's probably going to be active. Feels like Brooklyn is still planning on trying to bolster this lineup going later into the season. So to kind of talk about Brooklyn themselves, obviously Kyrie demanding a trade last week and getting it. A lot of rumors to the Lakers, a lot of different thoughts around the league where he might end up. He ultimately ends up in Dallas next to Luka, giving the Mavericks, I think, a legit chance this season. Just kind of, tell me what your thoughts and feelings were about that Kyrie, the trade demand, and then on top of that, getting traded as well.
Yes, I mean, Kyrie's as much of a wild card as they come, so you can never fully count out anything happening. I was surprised when I saw the request. I do think the Nets have kind of put it together this year prior to this trade. Like, there were stretches where they looked like contenders. They looked like things were clicking. They have some nice role players in place, but the Kyrie thing obviously changes that in a major way. I'm kind of surprised. I feel I'm in the minority for being pretty all in on it from Mavericks perspective, in the way that Luka obviously needed some help. He was up there putting up some like all-time usage rates, all-time percentages as far as how much he was touching the ball, everything that was going on. They desperately missed somebody in that Jalen Brunson role. And Kyrie Irving's a good bit better than Jalen Brunson, I would say. So they're also, their offense is already pretty built in like an isolation kind of style. It's not going to be the prettiest team basketball, but it's one that I think plays in the postseason. So I think it can kind of work. I'm excited that they're kind of going for it around Luka, and the fact that he is an expiring contract. If it's a disaster, if it doesn't work, if he's a headache, you can just walk away at the end of the season. So I love it from the Mavericks perspective.
Yeah, I was saying it all along. I actually think Luka and Kyrie fit pretty nicely together when you think about the offensive side of the ball and just like how much Luka creates on that end. It's going to make life pretty easy on Kyrie, and you can't do what you normally do with Luka and essentially send two guys at him constantly. There's going to be a really, really high level scorer aside him. And I think, like you said, it's a calculated risk, right? Like if things go really well and both sides are like, this is a really nice match, we could really be contenders for the next however many years. They have the ability to kind of show how it can work for the next, 3-4 months, and then reevaluate come summertime. And if Kyrie is like, I'm going to LA, which the way that LeBron and Kyrie both talked about it today, it kind of felt like he's going to end up in LA one way or another. It's the way things happen sometimes. But I think for the meantime, it makes you a legit contender for the Mavericks going into the season. The West is wide open. And I think that they might not be done. So I think that there's a chance that he even stays. But I actually really liked it. And I think the Mavericks have all this time have been saying, we need to pair somebody next to Luka to give him a chance, to give this team a chance. This is doing it to a really high degree. So I honestly loved it. I thought it was really good. Get him out of the East. No more worrying about Kyrie, and he can kind of go do whatever over there. And the Nets, I think, got worse.
Yeah, for sure. And I get like they're in a tough spot. If you obviously kind of have to trade him because he's going to just walk away at the end of the season, it's better get something than let him walk away for free. Spencer Dinwiddie, kind of funny. He's ending up back in the Nets after everything that happened and being sent away from there in the first place through that trade process, which kind of started this whole or started a good bit of this Big Three era. But I don't know. The Nets have just kind of are now like a notable notch below the, like, I felt like there was a pretty clear big four of the East between the Bucks, Celtics, Sixers, and Nets. The Nets are just dropped down on that list. I would even probably bump the Cavs above them at this point. And not that I ever would say I feel bad for Kevin Durant, but there's a part of me that's like this guy did kind of get left out to dry there. And I'm very interested to see what they do. I can't imagine there's anybody like of a big enough magnitude available that can catapult them back into that. But I don't know, kind of shocking turn of events from Brooklyn's perspective. Because like I said, I do think they like kind of were putting the pieces together and had some really nice flashes this year.
I think for the Nets, it's an interesting. I think you make a lot of really good points. It's a weird spot for them to be in. Like they've
Yeah.
gone such a roller coaster ride the last 2 or 3 seasons. It's just been unreal. And I know you pointed out a lot on Twitter how few games these guys play together. You know, if you're counting James Harden in that as well, like really
16.
there was no impact at all. So much drama, so much turmoil, and so little actual play because they would have been so lethal together. But I actually think in like the weirdest type of way, the Nets are in a better position right now. It really depends on what Kevin Durant wants to do. You know, it seems like they're not going to move him before Thursday. They've kind of told other teams that they're not going to move him before Thursday. So I think he's going to be up for grabs come summertime. I think he's probably going to have a little bit of input on where he goes to. But for right now, like they're going to try to compete, and it looks like they're ready to kind of use the picks that they've gained in the James Harden and now the Kyrie trade and all the other trades that they've made. They've recouped some picks, and now they're just seems like they're ready to unload them again. Do you see them making a splash? I've heard like OG Anunoby. I've heard even Pascal Siakam. Like, do you see them trying to make a charge at one of those like fringe star kind of guys?
Yeah, I mean they pretty much have to. Like A, because Kevin Durant's still on your team, and B, because they still don't own their draft picks. Still, the Rockets still have the Nets draft picks. I did a
Yeah,
whole video on the when I talked about the Kyrie thing, but I don't have the actually I definitely do have the details in front of me. I believe it's through 2029 that they have their draft picks.
yeah,
Uh so yeah, they can't tank because they don't have their own picks. So there's really no option except to go for it. But like I said, I don't know if there's anything out there on the magnitude of the market. But yeah, in that James Harden trade, no, I'm just not gonna find it offhand here. But
yeah,
either way, you know, like they pretty much have to find a way to go to it as much as possible. There we go. The Rockets hold the Nets pick swaps in 2025 and 2027, and they're straight up first round picks in 2024 and 2026. So like the
yeah.
Rockets are the real winners of this if this absolutely goes down the drain. I also do want to give a shout out to Jacques Vaughn too for I think he handled this just about as great as possible. And
My interactions with Kai have always been positive. I enjoyed coaching him. I want him to succeed. I'll keep it that simple. We've had some ups and downs, I guess, along the way, but I've also seen a young man score 60 points. I've also seen him bring his kids into the locker room. I've also seen him grow as an individual and be a better teammate than when I first met him. So for me, I'm always look at the good in people and want the good in people, and I want him to succeed.
And his answers talking about like the personal side of things, like his experience with Kyrie and talking about like how I've seen him be a better teammate from when I first met him and his growth. And I'm only going to look at that. I wish for his success. It's not the easiest thing to do when a guy's kind of like screwing your franchise. So I do respect him for that. And I think he handled it like a class act the whole time. So I'm a big Jacques Vaughn guy, both on the court as a coach and as a person. So I will give him his love there.
Yeah, he definitely deserved it. I think he's done a great job, kind of start to finish with all of this. It's not an easy situation to be in. Just coming from where he came from, the situation that played out with Steve Nash and everything that happened there, and then on top of that, you have a team that just like has not been consistently around, since he's been there. So I think he's done a really good job on that front. I just think Spencer Dinwiddie doesn't even seem like he's going to be playing there. Like I've heard a lot of the rumors are they're going to try to retool him. Like I think they could swing this around to kind of make it a pretty good situation, maybe get a little bit younger and have a team that's better top to bottom. I think they have a chance to do that. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. But to kind of turn our focus here, the Sixers have some work to do as well. And there's been conflicting reports. See a lot coming out today about them essentially trying to duck the tax. I know you mentioned they're able to do that while still making a run at some pretty good players. And I think a lot of people kind of see it as one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us how, they can kind of do both here. They can not only duck the tax and save some money, but also kind of upgrade their roster.
Yeah, so their financial situation, they're $5.5 million under the hard cap and 1.18, I believe it is, over the luxury tax line. Essentially, what that means is getting under that would save the Sixers organization, about $42 million over the next 2 years. So it's not like it's more than the 1.78 million would kind of indicate
Yeah.
just on the penalties for this and the repeater tax and that kind of thing. So it does make like a little bit of sense from that. But with that being said, like none of us are interested in David Blitzer's pockets or Josh Harris's pockets or whoever
True.
is actually footing this bill. So the bottom line is they still have to kind of find a way to compete for a championship. And I do think they can do both. They can find a way to cut that minimal amount of salary. That's just bringing in 1.7 or 178 million or whatever it is less in the trade and still making that happen. So I do get it. And I do think that it will be a major missed opportunity if they don't make a move here. So I have 5 trades that I want to go through here. I know, James, you have a couple targets as well. So do you want to bounce off? I try to be as outside the box as I could with these. A lot of these are pretty basic names kind of running around the Sixers Twitter, Sixers social media. But do you want to just kick it off like that and I start from the top?
Yeah, man, sounds good. I think there's a lot of different guys on here that I know will be interesting to talk about, maybe a little bit different than what people have seen. But there's also obviously the guys that are being rumored are rumored for a reason, so we'll cover that as well. Go ahead, let me hear it.
All right, so we'll start off with 2 pretty basic ones. The first one, pretty commonly thought about, but I think we should discuss Jared Vanderbilt for Matisse Thybulle and a 2023 second-round pick, which I would like to point out is becoming a little bit valuable. That's that Hornets second-round pick. Right now, I think it's slated for the 35th overall selection. So more than just a throw-in second-round pick. That's just barely over the first-round line. If you really want to squint and look at it, it's basically a first-round pick. So it's something of value, but once again, not anything that they have major to offer or move the tables. What do you think of Vanderbilt? And do you think his price will just get too steep to where the Sixers can't compete?
Yeah, I really like Vanderbilt. When we're talking about, he's one of the main guys I have on this list. I had Furkan and a later second, or that same second. That's pretty early. I think that like as long as you can kind of value that's early second round pick where it is, it makes sense for the Jazz to want that. It makes sense for the Sixers to be able to use that, and you're saving money there as well when we're talking about that earlier. But Vanderbilt as a player, I think he fits 2 of the major needs for this team. You hear a lot about the fact that he can play backup center, and he's kind of like that perfect kind of player for that position with the archetypes that James Harden has played alongside, the type of guys that were playing center for him. For the Rockets and those later teams. He's a really good defender, really strong, good rebounder, can play with or without Embiid. And I actually would love to see lineups where he is in the ball game alongside Embiid. I think he helps with that rebounding issue that we saw, especially this weekend with Joel and this team. So I think he can also switch on the outside, play really strong perimeter defense. Again, not much of a shooter, but can score, is athletic, adds that long athlete to the team that we've been looking for. I really enjoy that trade, even if it costs Matisse. I think I'm okay with that. I know a lot of people are kind of hanging on to him right now, though.
Yeah, I think it probably would in this deal, and I think for him, I think it's worth it. I think he's a guy who checks enough boxes. I like the aspect if he can be a little bit flexible to guard wings, guard up, and play some guys on the perimeter, which I do think they still need help, and still play that center. He's big enough to play a true center, and he's more of a true center than Montrezl Harrell or B-Ball Paul.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth it. I think that's worth a gamble, and I do think when push comes to shove, Vanderbilt probably is still a member of the Jazz come following the trade deadline, but I do hope I'm wrong and would love it if he ends up in a Sixers uniform.
It seems like that's like, sorry, it just seems like that's where everyone's kind of going. Like, I feel like the script kind of flipped where it was like all these other options. And then over the last 24 hours, people kind of zeroed in on him.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like, from what I was hearing, like it seems like he might be a guy that the Sixers really do try to target. Like, do you think in your heart of hearts that he's going to stay with Utah?
Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, if they get an offer that blows them away, I think they'll take it for sure because they're not interested in competing this year. He's not like a concrete part of their core, but he's also not a guy that I think they're interested in giving away and they wouldn't mind keeping around. I kind of feel the same way about Naz Reid. I don't have him on any mind, so if you want to touch on him at all, but I'm getting more of the buzz that he's probably not going anywhere either. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit of that too. I just feel like with him, personally, it feels like he might be a guy that's looking to move somewhere else. I mean, obviously can't speak to that specifically, but like there's a logjam there, and there's like 2 legitimate, previous All-Stars that are playing on that team in the same position that he's playing in. Obviously, him and Cat can play together. Him and Gobert could probably play together too. I'm sure they don't do it very often, but I like Naz Reid. I like his game a lot. What he brings to the table. Again, just a guy that can switch on defense, space the floor, really aggressive athlete at the center position, and would just like fit really nicely alongside Harden. I thought from the beginning his price tag would be too high. I feel like the general thought on him as a player is really high right now.
Yeah, and a $1.9 million cap hit, which makes him pretty valuable as a backup center. So yeah, I think he's another guy who, and part of it is just the trade market of this year of just kind of these types of players are obviously very desired and the types of pieces that contenders are looking to add. So the price tag's high for these types of guys. We'll move on to a guy who hopefully the price tag is a little cheaper, although Kyle Neubeck tweeted out that might not be the case following his performance last night, a 20-15 game out of Andre Drummond. I have the trade here. Andre Drummond and Derek Jones Jr. to the Sixers in exchange for Furkan Korkmaz, Jaden Springer, and a 2027 second-round pick.
I would do that now. I would do that right now. Obviously, again, we didn't really touch on the Furkan stuff.
True. Yeah, we should mention that.
All power to him. Whatever. He doesn't play here. I think it's fair for him to like want to play, considering he did sign here like this summer. Kind of, I'm assuming he wouldn't have signed here if he didn't expect to be getting minutes. So I don't really blame him. I feel like he's getting a lot of shit on Twitter for it. It's funny. It is comical. Like it's
Right.
definitely comical. You got to see the comedy there. But I think he's within his rights to want to be traded. And if, go ahead, send him over. Like the only hangout would be Springer. And like, again, I don't got to try to win right now. Totally okay with that. I like Derek Jones Jr. just as an athlete, a guy that can, you can throw in the game for a couple minutes, and then Drummond fixes the backup center problem. So he's not the best option. I know we've talked about this. Not my number one, but I think if that's a trade that they do, I'm going to be very happy with that. It makes them a really, really good team top to bottom.
Yeah, and to touch on the Furkan stuff, I do respect the guy just wants the ball. He just wants to hoop. He just wants to be on the court. It's also incredibly funny to me. He's already 0 for 1 on his trade requests. I don't think it's extremely likely that he gets this one. So him going 0 for 2 on trade requests would be hilarious. Dude, I will shout him out for getting NBA Central treatment on the tweet. Did not see Furkan getting his name mentioned up there in my in my expectations. So I don't know. I would like to see him be freed. I think it'd be best for both sides if he gets a clean slate and fresh start somewhere else. $5 million cap hit, while it seemed fine at the time, it's now aging to be a pretty steep price for him. So I don't think the market's going to be super high, but he is a nice salary filler with that kind of thing. I would love to. I mean, Drummond's just one of those like singles hits. Like you're not going to get a home run, but it's going to make the team better. It's going to check that. And I do like Derek Jones Jr. I think he's better in theory than he is in actuality, but he's still an athlete, a wing, a high flyer, a guy that can bring a little something different to the Sixers roster.
Yeah, definitely. Derek Jones Jr., I think, just thinking fast breaks, like outlet passes from James Harden, lobs from him, like just something that would make you get out of your seat every once in a while. And I feel like the Sixers don't have that very often. And he can shoot it a little bit. It's there. So I definitely think you're right, though. It's always the idea of Derek Jones Jr. always feels a lot better than like the reality of Derek Jones Jr. So, but still, I think really solid trade if that would happen.
Yeah. All right. This is my ringer here, James. I want to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah.
So 3-team trade. Philadelphia 76ers get Mo Bamba, Jonathan Isaac, and Josh Hart. Magic get Tobias Harris, Sixers 2023 second, Sixers 2028 second, and a Blazers first round pick. The Blazers get Matisse Thybulle and RJ Hampton. Let's goddamn go for this thing.
I don't know, man. I don't know about Tobias. I don't know about moving on from him. I don't know, man. It just seems like a lot to not move. Like, this is what you're like, you want this to happen?
I think I would do this. I think we get length. We get Mo Bamba and Jonathan Isaac on the court, like changes this entire Sixers complexion. Like they've had no length, no athletes. Isaac, I think, is legitimately good. I kind of was skeptical on the comeback. Then the reason I think that the Magic do this is I don't think either of these guys are in their long-term plans. And I think they're starting to flip this switch where they're starting to contend a little, obviously not this year, but starting to lay the groundwork for that. Like they have their core in place is what I'm saying. So adding Tobias is kind of like a culture kind of guy, I think would be a good move for them. Josh Hart, I also think adds a lot. Having a guard that can rebound at the rate that he does, it would be terrific for the Sixers team. He can shoot it well enough. Adds a lot of elements that I don't think they currently have. And I do think it like increases their championship chances.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like from the Magic's perspective, it definitely makes sense to move on from those guys. But to get Tobias Harris in return, like he plays the exact same position as Paolo, who you just drafted number 1 overall and are like feeling like he's been a real deal guy this season. And he seems to be projecting that way. So like paying Tobias $35 million next year to play the same position, and like what do you even do with them? And with Franz Wagner too. Like I don't think he fits there. If he was making 10 million, maybe, but like I don't know if they'd want to pay him that much. But for the Sixers, Mo Bamba I think is great. Like piece by piece, I think yes, they all would make sense. I like Josh Hart a lot, though. Like I've seen a lot recently. Like he just is not able to. They're not guarding him very much. Like teams are just like kind of letting him up on the 3. But I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm okay, like ready to switch it up that heavily. I feel like right now my expectations are like pretty mellow for this trade deadline. So like I just don't know if I can digest that this season.
This is the only thing that's cooked up that crazy. And to put it like team by team here, and first off, like I'm not a Magic insider by any means. They absolutely
Me either.
Have no business or no idea wanting this. My counter to kind of your points here is they're as positionless as it comes. You're jamming out like a log full of 6'8", whatever, and you're getting Tobias for essentially a year and a half as a culture guy, and then you let him walk. It is the move there. That's just basically to reset it before you're truly having to pay all these guys. Markelle obviously got his extension. They're starting to trickle in paying guys, but it's just kind of that placeholder, which I think is way more important to teams than it gets credit. They're also picking up 3 draft picks in this, 2 second-rounders and a first. For the Sixers, essentially, they would be trading out Tobias and Matisse and 2 second-rounders for Mo Bamba, Isaac, and Josh Hart. The Magic would be trading away Bamba, Isaac, and RJ Hampton to get back Tobias Harris and 3 draft picks. And the Blazers would be trading out Josh Hart and a first-round pick for Matisse Thybulle and RJ Hampton. So when you break it down like that, I do think it kind of works for a team. It would be a swing for the fences and probably is crazy. I don't really see it happening. It's probably as crazy as I can get, but this is the most creative I could get, something I could get excited about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it would shake things up for sure. I think the Sixers. I think at this point the Sixers just really like Tobias. I think that they've kind of, as a whole, I feel like they've accepted for what he's been able to do, and I don't see. I just like I don't know if I can handle it right now, but I think for the Blazers it makes sense. Kind of putting together those picks for the Magic as well. That gives it a lot more like substance there as well for them. Like if they were just getting Harris, it's one thing, but like getting 3 picks and like 2 seconds and a first makes a lot of sense for them. And yeah, I also don't like Jonathan Isaac at all. So maybe that hurts it as well. So I'd prefer to just never have to think about him again.
Yeah, I mean, I understand he's an interesting character for sure, and definitely comes without his flags. But to be honest, that's the only reason I think the Sixers would have, or any team has a chance at trading for him. I think talent wise, he is pretty damn talented and looks good since coming back. Yeah, and injuries. Had a full 2 years off, but he has looked good since he's come back. He looks like he's polished up. He's got a little turnaround jumper now, and just both these guys are more athletic, both Bamba and Isaac, than the entire Sixers roster, which I do think is a potential downfall of this team, particularly guarding on the perimeter, which Isaac can do 1 through 5. So I don't know if they want to swing for the fences. I'd be down for it. I don't realistically see it happen, but fun to talk about. We'll switch gears to something a little more realistic here. Deal with the Pistons here. Sixers land Nerlens Noel and Sadiq Bey in exchange for Furkan Korkmaz, Matisse Thybulle, Jaden Springer, and a 2027 second.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would do that very quickly. I think Sadiq Bey is another guy. Actually, what I've seen, though, I saw this NBA University. If you don't follow them, they do a lot of cool stuff. They posted a thing recently, like the most negative defenders in the league, and Sadiq Bey was actually on there. Which I was very surprised to hear. I felt like he, in my mind, maybe I don't know too much about Sadiq Bey, but in my mind, I've always felt like Sadiq Bey was a good defender. But again, a lengthy guy, can shoot the 3, can kind of play 3, 4. Don't know about his ability to play the 5, but like that, Nerlens, great backup center. We talked about him recently. Does make that little bit of extra money, but obviously it's getting taken care of with Thybulle and Furkan on the move. And Jaden Springer is, again, if that's what sweetens the pot for them, if they want to take a chance on his potential as a player, by all means, I think he has a better chance to prove himself in Detroit than he does here over the next couple of years. So that would be a win-win. I would take that trade.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would have no issue if this is how things end up. There was talk about Nerlens potentially getting bought out. He would be like a dream buyout kind of candidate. It sounds like there's a at least some kind of interest around the NBA for him. So I kind of doubt that happens. Then if they can trade him, they're obviously going to try and do that. If they can get something for him, it's kind of worth it for the Pistons for sure. I do think Jaden Springer could be a Detroit Piston and figure some stuff out there with some a chance to play through it. So I hate how much I've talked myself into Jaden Springer being an asset just because it's kind of all the Sixers have to work with. Sadiq Bey, I'm like perplexed by him because I definitely think we both have a more positive perception of him than is the reality. Especially when it was like talking about like a low first round pick as well, it would take to get from him. He's a little bit like Cam Reddish, like in my mind, like another guy who in theory is great. In actuality, it just doesn't quite translate. But I still think like it's a style of player the Sixers don't really have, and it's worth like taking a swing on is kind of how I look at it. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't be upset if this is the trade.
Yeah, I like that. Again, I think so. Let's talk about Thibault for a second too. With him, I know a lot of people. There's some like sector of this fan base that has now like reinvigorated this love for Matisse. And I've seen a lot of people talk about the on and off splits and the plus minuses and how the Sixers have a good record when he plays more than 20 minutes or has this many steals and stuff. And I understand that. I see where he's valuable, but not getting consistent minutes. Still, he has shown some growth offensively just as a shooter. He seems more willing, just as a whole. He's got like a couple more floaters. He's got a little bit of that baseline thing that he does, whatever. A little bit more aggressive on that end. Do you see him being traded here? Again, a guy that makes $4+ million this year can be kind of the piece that's not only can give you some type of return. I think there's still value for him out there, but he also kind of gives you a little bit of cap, to move around. He's a valuable piece in terms of those two things. Do you see him getting moved here? Because he is a restricted free agent, but he's still a free agent. A team might overpay him, and you can't match. So, like, is it nice would it be better to get value right now?
Yeah, I personally think it is, and I think it's pretty likely he's a guy on the move if there is a trade. I'm not a huge Thibault guy, and I also look at this from the aspect of like when the playoffs come, your rotation gets smaller, not larger. So we're cutting down to like 7 to 8 guys, maybe 9, and Thibault doesn't crack that for the Sixers, especially with the faith that Doc clearly does not have in him. So to me, and for the reasons you brought up, like I think it's pretty unlikely he wears a Sixers uniform next year. So I think you're better off getting something for him in return, a guy that is more of a lock to be within your playoff rotation, which I think Nerlens Noel absolutely would be. So I do think it is worth moving on. I also I get the on-off splits. I've seen the numbers. I don't think he's a postseason player, and I also just don't think those stats match the eye test with him. There has been growth with him as an offensive player. He looks more willing. He definitely does, and is taking strides, but he's still just like he might have moved from the 449th best offensive player in the NBA to like the 400th. Like we're making baby steps here, so it's not like he's gonna be he's still gonna be a guy that defenses pay no attention to in the postseason, and we're running from that issue. So I do think the Sixers are better off moving on from Thibault when all things are said and done.
Yeah, and I could see it happening. But again, I could also see it happening both ways with him. I wanted to kind of go back here to look at Sadiq Bey's stats, just because I was curious to see. This year, he's averaging 15 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, and 1.6 assists. He is shooting from the field 40.7% on just under 12 attempts. And from three, he's shooting 34.6% on 5.7 attempts. At one point, he's a career 35.8% shooter on 6.7 attempts. His attempts have gone down since the last year, but still putting up a pretty solid 15 points for, he started 21 or 30 games out of 51. So he's kind of doing both starting and coming off the bench. Obviously, he'd be comfortable coming off the bench here. Like, I know the defense might not be there totally, but still a guy that can compete there and gives you 15 points. Like, sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah, not bad. He was in the high 20s for 3-point percentage when I checked a couple weeks ago. So moving in the right direction, I guess, trending upwards there. Those aren't bad numbers when you look at him like that. Am I correct that his minutes have gone down the past couple years?
Let me look.
Because I believe that with his role kind of shrinking, and for this year specifically, it's kind of gone down. Yeah, that's
so he went from his rookie season 27 minutes per game. Last year he played 33, and then this year he's played 29. So yeah, but only by
Okay.
4 minutes per game. I think it's kind of been like a little bit of a Sadiq Bey upturn over the
Yeah,
last couple
sounds
of
like it.
weeks. But yeah, he's still definitely seen his role diminish. He's taking less shots from the last 2 years too.
Yeah, so maybe a buy low guy. I wouldn't be mad about it. I'll throw out my last trade at you now, James. I think I texted you this a while ago back, so I'm curious your thoughts. But for the Lakers, who I have heard have some interest in Furkan Korkmaz, and I've heard that kind of bubbling around since the beginning of the year. So I would not be shocked if this is where he ends up. But Lonnie Walker, Thomas Bryant, and Dennis Schroeder to the Sixers for Georges Niang, Furkan Korkmaz, and Shake Milton.
Uh,
Is Niang the deal breaker for you?
yeah.
Okay.
Like
Wow.
actually, like I'm being serious.
Mhm.
Like Dennis Schroeder, I don't like him too much. I feel like his game is just whack.
Okay.
Like Lonnie Walker again. Like you talk about a guy I like in theory. Love Lonnie Walker in theory,
Sure.
but I don't think Lonnie Walker is a playoff rotation kind of guy. And then like Thomas Bryant, I is an upgrade over Montrez, but I don't think that he's that much of an upgrade. I don't think he's like a needle mover or anything. Furkan, like again, happy to see him go. It'd be hilarious if LA is where he ended up. Like,
He'd be a star, superstar
oh
out
my
there.
god, they would either love him immediately, like he would have like one of those Furkan games, and they would love him forever, or it would be the worst thing ever for both sides. But either way, I don't know how I feel about that one. I like
Okay.
Shake and Niang are both guys that play consistently every single night. I don't know that I would want to see Dennis Schroeder and like Thomas Bryant and Lonnie Walker take those minutes.
Okay. First off, I think Furkan's gonna have his name in a star on Hollywood Boulevard.
I hope so. I
Yeah.
genuinely hope so.
But yeah, I think I'm a little bit higher on all three of these Lakers guys than you are. I think Thomas Bryant is like pretty legitimately good as a backup center. I think he can be like, I mean, I feel like we've tossed this around a lot, but I think he would be Joel Embiid's best backup center that he's ever had, and I think he can
Yeah.
play. His numbers look good this year, and the eye test is past that. I was torn between him and Wenyen Gabriel when kind of making this trade, but I do think Thomas Bryant is the better option out of the two, and I think he's pretty solid. I think both those guys are fairly solid as backup big men, to be honest. Schroeder, I
I
think
like Gabriel.
you like Gabriel
I
more.
like Gabriel.
Okay.
I think if I'd rather have one or the other, just because I think playoff time, if you're thinking about a backup center, like Gabriel can play on the perimeter. Like he will go out. Like he's not, you don't ideally want him there, obviously, but he's like a pesky, long, like big, where I think that Bryant's a little bit more clunky. He can definitely hold his own. He's definitely not the worst option. But I think like Gabriel, I think he switches a lot better. But I don't know.
Okay.
Again, I haven't watched terribly too much Lakers basketball this season, so I can't give you the lowdown on everything there, but that's my perspective at least.
Okay. Yeah. The Schroeder thing, I think Schroeder is a good bit better than Shake Milton. I think he would be
Okay.
a pretty significant, not pretty significant. I mean, he's got his issues for sure, but I
Yeah.
think he would be a notch forward there. Do you think Georges Niang is a playoff rotation player?
Yeah, I was thinking about this yesterday. We were having a conversation, and
Right
it's
now,
so
he has
tough.
to be. He has to be on this team right now.
Yeah, on this team right now, he definitely is. But I think that there's absolutely some question, right? Like he got played off the floor as a defender last year.
Yeah.
It happened multiple games. The thing is, him getting hot for 5 minutes can win
Right.
you a basketball game. So it really does give and take very heavily on both ends. Like he is a guy that if he has a good 5-10 minute run, like it changes the game. It goes from a 4-point lead to a 15-point lead, and you're like, what the hell happened? So I don't know. It's really tough because he really can't play defense. He really struggled last year.
Yeah, I've been torn on this too, and he competes defensively. He tries his ass
He
off. Like,
tries, yeah.
I'm not in a rush to get rid of Niang, but like, I still am concerned. Like when it comes to the end of when we get to playoff season, we just can't keep him out there, and when he's
Yeah,
not hitting, he pretty much gives you nothing too, and that's the
that's
hard
true.
part too. Like as much
And
as
he chucks.
yeah,
It's
oh
part
yeah,
of his job to chuck, but he does.
yeah. Oh yeah. Which I love, and I would rather him go down shooting than just
Yeah.
like not doing it. But like the Knicks game the other night, he was 0 for 4 from 3, 0 for 5 from the field, and extremely poor defensively. And it's like that was a brutal Niang game. And that's kind of what you get with him. He's obviously an NBA role player, an inconsistent kind of guy. I love him. I love having him on the team, but I do question if he's going to be capable of holding up come postseason time.
Yeah, I think he's a guy though that like is definitely worth keeping through the trade deadline unless he's part of a deal that like makes you significantly better. I think in a deal like this, like he actually becomes the guy that I'm like, no, he that's too much. I just was looking at Schroeder's stats. He's playing a lot better than I think I'm necessarily realizing. I think that there's a perception about Schroeder that I may have bought into a little bit. But he would be just definitely a more legit backup point guard than Shake. I think Shake's not a point guard. He's just kind of been pushed into that role.
Right.
And I think Schroeder would definitely be. He's averaging 4 assists per game, 12 points, 35% from three. I didn't get to take a chance to see what Shake was shooting. But yeah, I think that would be an upgrade over Shake. And I guess with Bryant being an upgrade over Harrell, I could see it. But I don't know. Niang, maybe I'm fond of him.
Yeah, I am too. I would be sad to see him go, but I don't know. I am a little concerned about what happens come postseason time with Georges. Are there any other targets that you wanted to talk about, James?
I had Kenrich Williams on here
Okay.
just as a again, I feel like he's probably not going anywhere. I think the Thunder really like him and as they should. But as a guy when you're talking about really good defenders, just like high quality offensive player, high quality defensive player, kind of gives you both on both ends. He can do a little bit of everything on the defensive end. You don't want him necessarily guarding your ones, maybe not your twos too much, but like 3, 4, 5, he can kind of handle it all. So I don't know what the trade package would look like. He'd probably be the on the more expensive side in terms of, players that you're giving away from here value wise, not just matching numbers, but matching player value. And I think it would probably cost more than what the Sixers are willing to give up. But what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I like him. I kind of agree on the side of I think he'd be kind of expensive. I think the Thunder are kind of cool with keeping him too. I
Yeah.
don't think he's really like a guy that they're rushing to sell. So realistically, I'm not sure if I think it's super likely. And I would welcome him on the Sixers. I think his strength is always what like jumps off the page to me every time I see him.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but he's just kind of like he'll go up and get a board and like he holds it kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I do like Kenrick Williams. I wouldn't mind it. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's kind of where I sit is I just can't wrap my mind around the Sixers putting around a deal that could intrigue the Thunder enough.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I was thinking. When you're saying, like when you're looking at George Niang and what he doesn't do, like Williams doesn't shoot at the same volume and percentage that Niang does. Like Niang definitely has that, but he's still a very good shooter from all areas beyond the 3-point line. And he's a really good, solid defender, strong defender, good rebounder. Like playing him alongside Embiid changes a lot. Like I think that if you're looking for a legitimate upgrade over Niang, a guy that plays a similar role but is like a much better version of that, Kenrich Williams is my idea of that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. I do need to see the Sixers do something. Once again, they still only have 14 rostered players, and that tax obviously seems to be a big deal for them. So, will
Yep.
be interesting to see. They also play the Boston Celtics tomorrow night, which I think is a nice measuring stick kind of game for them. Any expectations for that game, James?
Um, Maybe not any expectations, but I'm looking for it to be a good game. I want that like these are the kind of matchups. We're getting into February here. Is it the last one before when is All-Star break? Is that the following weekend?
Yeah, not their last game before then. I forget exactly when, but
So like it's coming up to that point in the season. I think the Sixers have proved a lot over the last couple months, but it looked like they may have been looking past maybe the Knicks this weekend and looking forward to this game. I want it to be a strong one, everyone to be healthy. I'm excited for it. I think this is national television. Like this is where Embiid and Harden should thrive, and it'll be really interesting to see how they match up.
yeah, and we're gonna get a look at the perimeter defense on two of the premier guys with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And hey, man, if Sixers cannot hold up, you better go get Jonathan Isaac. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we'll see what happens. See what goes on with that. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe on the channel if you haven't already. And yeah, me and James will talk with you next time.